And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
Since October 7, 2023, we have seen the best in people, and we have definitely seen the worst of people. We have seen people who are exceedingly supportive, and then all of a sudden, something midway turned them around totally 180. We have heard what Candace Owens, we have heard about Tucker Carlson. Now we're dealing with Nick Fuentes and trying to understand these influencers that God has given you a talent. God has given you a platform and a gift to talk and to speak. Why not use your platform to unite versus to divide? Let's watch this presentation by Mr. Ben Shapiro, who helps us wrap our minds around of what has happened and what's going on with especially Nick Fuentes. Let's watch it together and we'll discuss it afterwards. Kindly subscribe to our channel so a little bit of light push away a lot of darkness.
Don't understand what's going on. Let's begin with Nick Fuentes. Now, from Tucker Carlson's interview, you might have gathered that Fuentes has some borderline views on race, a peculiar obsession with what he calls organized Jewry, and a rather sad relationship with the female sex. But probably you came away thinking that, for the most part, Fuentes lives on the radical edge of normality. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living. But back to Nick Fuentes. To understand just what Tucker did here, we must actually examine what Nick Fuentes says on his show, and has said for almost a decade, because he was asked precisely 0 questions about any of what you're about to see by Tucker Carlson. Nick Fuentes says women want to be raped.
A lot of women want to be raped. And when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that. But there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
Nick Fuentes says that his followers should kill, rape, and die in his name.
Raise your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I will kill, rape, and die for Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes says that white people are justified in being racist.
The reason that we talk about this, by the way, I know a lot of black people see this and they go, man, why are you always talking about black people, this and that? Because there just needs to be some shame here. Well, there's a few reasons. First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
Nick Fuentes is a Hitler admirer and a Holocaust denier.
Buddy, it's Führer Friday. It is Hitler Friday. Shut up. It is Heil Hitler Friday, nigga. Heil Hitler, all my niggas Nazis.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really fucking cool. So, you know, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right, boys? Am I right? Let's go. He was also really fucking cool. It doesn't really sound correct to me. Wait a second. It takes 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies, and you have 15 ovens, probably in 4 different kitchens, right? Doing 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years. How long would it take you to make 6 million? I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be 5 years, right? The math doesn't seem to add up there. The math doesn't quite seem to add up there. I don't think you'd result in 6 million. Maybe 200 to 300,000 cookies. And I think the Red Cookie Association said something like that, probably 200 to 300,000 cookies baked. probably. And in addition, in this hypothetical, I imagine that if you took aerial photographs over the kitchens, you would need to see certain smokestacks to release the smoke from baking the cookies, and the smokestacks would project certain shadows, but I guess they're not visible in the aerial photographs taken over the kitchens. Moreover, if you look at the soil texture, it's really not deep enough for mass cookie storage underground.
Nick Fuentes believes that the Jews start all the wars, that perfidious Jews in positions of power ought to be killed, and says the Jews are filth who have to be removed from the country.
And once again, remember who is responsible for it all: the Jews. They are responsible for every war in the world. It's not even debatable at this point. This has nothing to do with oil. This has nothing to do with democracy. This has nothing to do with liberal internationalism. We are at war with Iran because they pose a threat to Israel's hegemony. That's why we're bombing their nukes, to pave the way for regime change so Israel can dominate the region, because that makes them the most powerful they can be.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And I'm far more concerned about that than I am about even non-white people or mass migration. These people that are communing with demons and engaging in this sort of witchcraft and stuff, and these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. This is God's country. This is Jesus' country. This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
Josh Hammer and Mark Levin, fuck these people. Like, deeply, seriously. All real Americans, if you are a real American, if you were born in this country, I don't even care who you are, what you are, if you are a real American that loves this country, you have generations in this country, your family or you fought for this flag, fought for the Constitution, fought for our church, fought for our civilization. For all of you, I say about Josh Hammer and Mark Levin and Laura Loomer, fuck them. Fuck them. Deeply, seriously, get them the fuck out of our country.
So, that right there is just a brief glimpse into the twisted mind of Nick Fuentes. And there's plenty more where that came from, of course. Hours of it per day, in fact. And there's no doubt that Nick Fuentes has a lot of play these days. That's because the left, by moving into a politics of anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male identitarianism, created its bizarro mirror image, a white pseudo-Christian incel identitarian movement dedicated to destroying the institutions of this country and replacing Americanism with something else. Nick Fuentes' philosophy is not fully formed. It's an incoherent stew of malignity. But that's where Tucker Carlson enters the story. Now, since his exit from Fox News in 2023, when, of course, he was a very, very popular host, Tucker Carlson has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar. Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. Its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is not ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
So I guess you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody here is from the United States, buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that, a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general. It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people as well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, as individuals who are, quote unquote, independent from anyone. That's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing, and that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics, not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel and Mossad, making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson also said in his interview with Nick Fuentes that the people he hates most in the entire world, more than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Trans-Tifa, Marxists, rapists, murderers, are Christian Zionists who represent an enormous chunk of the conservative base. According to Tucker Carlson, who admits that he first read the Bible all the way through just 2 years ago, Christians who support a Jewish state of Israel are heretics and blasphemers with a brain virus.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
But most of all, Tucker Carlson acts as an ideological launderer for other people's evils. Tucker Carlson says many inflammatory things, always buying back just enough of it to appear as though he's not saying what he's clearly saying. He's a master of gaslighting. Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care, and then he provides them with a massive signal boost. So, for example, he'll ask a series of wildly obsequious questions to Nick Fuentes. He'll even let Nick Fuentes' support for Joseph Stalin slide.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that, I guess. Like,
well, that's okay. Let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
Tucker Carlson will have on a Hitler-friendly pseudo-historian to minimize the Holocaust and blame Winston Churchill for World War II. And he will call him America's best and most honest historian.
I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there.
See, this is how Tucker Carlson's ideological laundering works. You bring your dirty, ugly ideologies to Tucker Carlson's rhetorical car wash. He mixes it with some of the vestigial respect Americans have for him from his Fox News days, and voila, hideous ideas suddenly become mainstream. And then, of course, Tucker denies he said anything controversial at all. He was just asking questions. He was just interviewing people. You don't want him to cancel people, do you? Of course, there is no First Amendment right to a Tucker Carlson sensual massage. But to listen to Tucker, you'd think there was, so long as you despise America, oppose President Trump's foreign policy, and bear a peculiar dislike of Jews. Tucker Carlson, you see, is a coward. And here is where his relationship with Nick Fuentes begins, with Nick Fuentes correctly pointing out that Tucker Carlson is a coward. You see, Tucker Carlson, a few weeks back, had on Candace Owens to treat her to his usual ideological laundering services. That's after years of Candace Owens saying things like this.
And it is the case that dinosaur bones, for whatever reason, are always just found by the paleontologist. Like, it's not like you and me walking outside. I'm like, hey, a dinosaur bone. And, or by somebody who's related to a paleontologist. It's very strange. And then, but it was just convenient for Israel that JFK got shot. It was just convenient, you guys. Totally convenient. It was convenient for Israel, by the way, when the towers went down.
I just want to be clear. Anything happens to me, blame the Zionists. Like 1000% blame the Zionists. Like let that be my parting word.
I'm waking people up to the fact that pedophiles are in power.
Yes.
They are literally in power. And that is intentional because then they can be controlled while they are in power. And they are also exhibiting signs of a psychopathology that lets them know that they will do harm to the masses and feel nothing because they were themselves, many of them, raped when they were children. Yep. It is not a coincidence that Justin Trudeau is gay. Obama, gay. Zelensky, gay. Emmanuel Macron, gay and married to a trans man who molested him when he was a child.
Well, Candace Owens had recently hosted Nick Fuentes, and this led Tucker Carlson, in an attempt to dissociate from Fuentes, to label him a weird little gay kid operating from a basement, and a Fed as well.
That's obvious to me. I've been around a long time. I know it when I see it.
Yeah, and I will say I don't understand it. We were very kind to him. Like, I truly, like, we almost said, like, we felt maybe he was a bit lonely. We should invite him back for dinner. I mean, that's how good of an experience I had.
Clearly it's
and then
sad.
it was a 180. So it's either A, it's being driven from like a little boy insecurity, and he just was so worried that he like just went on the attack because he doesn't know how to have normal relations after being banned everywhere.
Well, I think there's
that could be one element.
The angry gay kid thing going on. Yeah.
Well, Nick Fuentes did not take kindly to this. After all, here was Tucker Carlson, a man Nick Fuentes correctly sees as a fellow traveler, dismissing him, all the while refusing to say the sorts of things for which Fuentes takes slings and arrows. And so Fuentes unleashed on him as a fraud and also as an expert on gaslighting.
Tucker is like the GOAT of gaslighting. But unironically, he goes up at the memorial and said, Charlie Kirk told the truth. You know who else told the truth? Jesus. And you know what happened? He got killed by Jews. And people said, so are you saying that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk in the way that they killed Jesus for telling the truth because they hate the truth? And Tucker said, I never said that. You're crazy. I never said that. Everyone eats hummus. What do you mean everyone runs Jerusalem? But I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Tucker Carlson says, I have so many trust funds, I never have to work. Tucker went to a $45,000 per year private high school, then a $45,000 per year selective Ivy League school in New England. Tucker Carlson's daddy was a Reagan appointee. And then, after years of bragging about being an elite, bragging about being so out of touch and so rich, now he's going to be the spokesperson for all the white people. Now he's going to roll up his sleeves. I just like to hunt and fish in my log cabin. I care about Klarna and credit card debt. But then when it comes to me, I'm one of the real disaffected white people. You want to talk about me and them? I am them.
Well, there was one big problem for Tucker Carlson in all of this. Nick Fuentes is absolutely 100% correct. Tucker is a coward, and Tucker's audience, much of which he shares with Nick Fuentes, knows it. And so Tucker hit upon a final stratagem. He let Nick Fuentes cuck him. He brought Nick Fuentes on to legitimate his ideology. He signal boosted Fuentes, glossed him, shined him, presented him to the world, all in order to protect his own reputation with his online base, a base he is competing over with Nick Fuentes. Now, of course, Tucker has a right to do all of this for the 100th time. He can do what he likes. This is America. But there's no question that Tucker has become the most virulent super spreader of vile ideas in America. And the rest of us who oppose those vile ideas have every right to call him that. Well, now Tucker Carlson has seen fit to launder Nick Fuentes, the person who hated Charlie most and who wished him destruction. That's not an act of friendship. It's an act of sick evil. And then, of course, there's Tucker Carlson's relationship with the vice president. Certainly, Vice President Vance has been quite generous with Tucker Carlson. That loyalty was not reciprocated last week, to say the least. Here, for example, is what Nick Fuentes has said about J.D. Vance's wife, Usha.
Andrew Tate and Bronze Age pervert and all these people, for years, all they talk about is going to the gym, being a vitalist, fighting the Matrix, India smells bad, all this kind of shit. And now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet who named his son Vivek, who was mentored by a Jewish neocon and a gay Fed, Peter Thiel. This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity?
You slammed J.D. Vance for having an Indian wife, yet Trump's wife is an immigrant who was working here illegally for a time. His son is half foreign, bilingual, and holds dual citizenship, yet you give him a pass. You're either a hypocrite or just retarded.
She's white! Dude, she's white! If we had millions of Slovenian supermodels immigrating to America, I don't think we'd have a big problem with it.
And this is where we try to wrap our mind around. I know I grew up and I was taught very early on. Everything you see, everything you hear is a lesson to be learned from. As we go through our journey in life, we're going to encounter the good, the bad, and the ugly. The fact that we are exposed to such vile, to such poisonous rhetoric, there has to be something that we got to take from it. For Nick Fuentes to have a platform like this and to just rant the way he is doing, it totally blows our minds away. How does someone like that get traction? And not only traction, but it has such a platform and gets recognized. I mean, the vile, the hate, the lies, the myths, the Holocaust denying, everything that comes out of his mouth is all divisive, destructive, evil, dark. And yet, he's been given this platform. And we look at Tucker Carlson, who we just cannot understand. How does a guy go 180? There has to be some other influences that's paving that way. And of course, Candace Owens, who used to work for Prager University, used to work for with Ben Shapiro, and gone totally 180. So it brings us back to the basics of humanity. God created each one of us for a specific purpose and a specific mission for a specific amount of time. So we are here in the world now, in the now, for a purpose and a reason. The day you and I were born, God said the world can no longer exist without you. So which means you have a specific purpose in life. You have a specific purpose in why you're here and why you are here in the now. Why are you and I here in the 21st century? In Jewish tradition, we believe that we are reincarnated souls. That we were here before in some other century, in some other time. But God sends us back to this world to accomplish what we missed out in our last journey. And we oftenly wonder, what is our mission? Why are we here? Why did God put me now, in this moment, in the 21st century? And yet, how do I know what my mission is? I could just go through my whole life's journey, and have I accomplished what and why I was sent here for? So my great rabbi penned a letter once in 1951. And this was a letter he wrote to someone who was struggling in his marriage. And he told the rabbi, I really want to stay in this marriage, but there are so many challenges. So the Rebbe went on to explain in this letter that every person who's living in our generation now are most likely a reincarnated soul. And we are here to make up for what we missed in the past. And the Rebbe went on to write, how do you know what your mission in the world is? He says, look at what is the most challenging task in your life. If you can identify what challenge in life gives you the most resistance, that is your mission. And the Rebbe said, your marriage. Perhaps you're going through these difficulties with so much resistance because that is your mission on the world, is to find a way to make the marriage work. We could always find 10 reasons why it shouldn't work. Find the one reason why it should work. So this is our challenges in life. God creates us. We are born. We are born not by choice. God decides when we are born, and God decides when we die. In the meantime, God sets us in motion to be an ambassador for good. God sets us in motion to be in this world to help humanity and to promote goodness and kindness and unity amongst all humanity, regardless of race, color, or religion. With that, God gave us what's known as free will. We have the ability every day when we wake up to choose right from wrong, good from bad, light from darkness. We have total control, free will. The same thing we have free will in what words we say and how this day is going to be. Am I going to spend this day just stoking flames of anti-Semitism, of lies and myths? Am I going to spend this day in divisiveness, in trying to break this world apart? Or am I going to spend this day in uniting the world, in finding what we have in common, not what divides us? And God gave you talents. We look at these three individuals you spoke about, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. These are individuals that God has given them talents. The talent, the ability to develop who they have become and to be an orator, to be a host, to be an anchor, to have a social media platform with millions of people listening to you. So ask yourself the question, why did God give me these talents? Did God empower me to be divisive, to spread lies, myths, and hurtful comments that just brings destruction to this world? Ask yourself that question. Is this really how I want to go down in history? Because you do have the free will, you do have the choice. When you're sitting in front of the microphone, you have the moment of truth that you could choose. Am I going to spend this moment casticizing, lying, and just being divisive and creating chaos in this world? Or can I use this platform, this moment, to be uniting, to be uplifting, to be inspirational, to be kind, to be generous to humanity? And this is what you and I are going to be faced with. We're going to be listening to rhetoric from the far left to the far right and in the middle. And it is our choice, our free will, to filter through the negativism that is out there. And the more we see that there's negative out there, the more it empowers us to be more positive. And that is perhaps the lesson why we are exposed to such negativity, such darkness, and such vile lies and myths and conspiracies. It's to inspire us to set the record straight. It to inspires us to be vocal, not to be in the sidelines and just listen and yeah, and click away. It's rather to empower you, to embolden you, to set the record straight. God created the world in equal measures. As much good there is also evil. And it is a war, a battle that we face with every single day. When we see the evil, the darkness being so emboldened, it needs to inspire us to become more active, not to be complacent and apathetic and just say, they're just spouting out words. No, you too need to be vocal. You too need to get out there and be a truth seeker and talk the truth and say the truth and demyth what you have been hearing and set the record straight and be a vocal point. God gave you also talents. God gave you the ability, whether it's to speak, whether it's to write, whether it's to be able to be successful in social media. Be the one who partners with the goodness. Be the one who partners with the right side of the history. Be on the side of God. Be an ambassador for good. Be an ambassador of unity, of togetherness, of love, of unconditional love, of having compassion and love for our fellow human being, regardless of race, color, or religion. Be the one who's going to be a light unto the nations. Be the one who's going to wake up in the morning and say, what can I do to help humanity? What can I do to fight the negativism that is being spewed out there? What can I do to be a light to push away the darkness, because yes, you can be God's ambassador. Yes, you could wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to do something positive to push away the darkness. Today I'm not going to allow the negativity that is the narrative that's being written out there, the rhetoric that's coming out of these platforms, but I'm going to be the one who's going to fight it. I'm going to be the one who's going to bring justice to what's been happening to the world, and I'm going to be the one who's going to break the divisiveness and break racism and bigotry and divisiveness that has been dividing the world, but we are rather going to unite the world, because you have that ability. You have God's blessing with you to use the power of your mouth, the power of your fingers, the power of your heart and soul to do good in this world and to spread goodness and to spread the truth that will dispel all the lies. And don't be shy about it. Go with the right side of history. Walk with God. God will walk with you, and God will carry you on the clouds. You're going to fly high. That don't be shy about using your opinion, what you believe that is right and correct, to set the record straight. And when you walk with God, God will walk with you, and God will guide you. God will embolden you. God will give you all the energy and strength and talents that you need so that we can combat these type of lies and darkness that are being spewed out there, because they will not survive. They will not win. Only goodness will win and survive. Only light will survive, and light would bring us victory. And ultimately, the greatest victory is going to be when the Messiah arrives. As prophesied in Isaiah 53, when there's no longer going to be any evil in the world, there's no longer going to be any war, envy, there's only going to be love. There's only going to be recognition of godliness in a revealed way. Even the animals will lie with each other. The lion and the lamb will be together. The whole nature of the world will be elevated. So there's no longer going to be divisiveness, but rather unity, true unity. And the greatest unity would be with the revelation of the coming of the Messiah speedily in our days. Amen. God bless you. God loves you.